Attention deficit hyperactivity disorder is a neurodevelopmental disorder because it has early onset and persistent course, is associated with lasting alterations in neural development, and is often accompanied by subtle delays and problems in language, motor, and social development. Based on the DSM criteria, ADHD is diagnosed with a persistent pattern of inattention and/or hyperactivity impulsivity that interferes with functioning or development. The first one is inattention. The second is hyperactivity and impulsivity. Here you will see a table of the criteria for inattention and the criteria for the hyperactive impulse symptoms. There are 3 presentations of ADHD. The first one is predominantly inattentive. The second is predominantly hyperactive, and there can also be a combined presentation of the 2. It can also be diagnosed in different severities, such as mild, moderate, and severe. ADHD is the most prevalent childhood psychiatric disorder in Canada. The general prevalence of ADHD is estimated at between 5 to 9% for children and adolescents, and 3 to 5% for adults.
The problems of children with ADHD go past the issues of the disorder itself. Assessment should address the primary ADHD symptoms, as well as other aspects of the child's behavioral, emotional, and social functioning. It's also important to gather family history. This can provide a better understanding for the problem behaviors. Gathering information about the family helps to know how much the caretakers are able to implement treatment strategies into the child's life. The steps to getting your child evaluated include making an appointment with a specialist and then speaking to your child's school by calling your child's principal. The clinical evaluations of ADHD may include parent and child interviews, a biopsychosocial assessment interview including family history, parents and teacher completed child behavior rating scales, parent self-report measures, direct behavioral observations of the child in natural and clinical settings, clinic-based psychological tests, review of school and medical records, intelligence testing, educational achievement testing or screening if there are any academic challenges, formal speech and language assessment, and neurodevelopmental screening and pediatric examinations.
How does ADHD look in general? There are 4 main symptoms of a learning disability. The first is attention difficulties and distractibilities. The symptom is almost always present, and children have the inability to focus their attention on one thing for any period of time. They often also act younger than their age. The next is hyperactivity. Not all children display this, but they often are restless, fidgeting, and they have the inability to sit still. The next 2 are impulsivity and attention-demanding behavior, particularly from adults. There are differences in the way boys and girls show their symptoms. Boys often follow closely to the 4 main symptoms I just described. However, girls who with ADHD often are inattentive by the means of daydreaming. They're often underactive, shy, anxious, and depressed. As well, they might be overly chatty and considered bossy. So these symptoms often go underdiagnosed, and they get considered overlooked by professionals, parents, and teachers.
As Maddie touched upon earlier, with the different types of ADHD, its presentation within the classroom can vary from inattentive symptoms to hyperactive or impulsive symptoms. Students with inattentive symptoms within the classroom can range from making careless mistakes or being easily distracted by surroundings, which often affects the student's ability to follow instructions. Ultimately, this has a trickle-down effect and impacts the student's ability to complete work or even chores within the classroom. Now, in regards with the hyperactive or impulsive symptoms, they can present themselves in a manner where the child is very fidgety, or even the fact that he or she can squirm in her chair, or also not even stay seated. They also tend to blurt out answers without being called upon, or even interrupting their peers. It is said that these individuals are always on the go, or driven by a motor. Which brings up the topic that Jen will be discussing, in regards with strategies that teachers can implement into the classroom for individuals with ADHD.
All know the facts about ADHD. How can we help these children succeed in the classroom? It's important for teachers to educate themselves on the various techniques that can be used to help children with ADHD succeed. They must firstly get to know their students in order to implement individualized effective strategies. For instance, teachers can use behavioral classroom interventions, which has been proven to be more successful than medical treatments. Positive reinforcement used within the classroom can also help increase any behavior that you want to see more of. Implementing accommodations such as preferred seating, reduced classroom assignments completed in the same spot for too long, or increasing the time for test taking can also be very effective. Research has stated that smaller classrooms and reduced distractions can also help increase academic performance in students with ADHD. A strategy that can also be used is increasing physical activity. So, for example, allowing the student to jump on a ball during circle time. Lastly, teachers can allow children with ADHD to make their own choices, such as which assignment they would like to complete first so that they only focus on one small task at a time without feeling overwhelmed. Therefore, there are many strategies that teachers can help implement to increase the academic performance in children with ADHD and give them many opportunities to grow within the classroom.